Hello everyone! Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Edged and Gone, presented by me, Gregory Richardson, here on Puritans Radio. Today I will give you a full detailed preview of the second Rothesay Test of the newly named Anderson Tendulkar Trophy as England seek to go 2-0 up in this series and India look to counterpunch after a painful loss to level the playing field in the 5-test series. Edged and Gone will be a special summer feature which focuses purely on Test cricket as part of Ian Fleming's 80s show as the Rothesay Test series between England and India goes on until Monday, 4th August. So a full analysis of the series on Wednesday, 6th August will draw the curtains on the 2025 Test summer. Right then, before I get into it, I'd like to remind all of you that on my 4 1/4 Sports feature, aired on Friday 20th June, I predicted that the series would be 3-1 to England because the hosts have a strong batting lineup and an interesting looking bowling lineup with injured players such as Gus Atkinson, Mark Wood and even Jofra Archer set to steadily make their way back into the side as the Test summer goes on. Furthermore, India are without Virat Kohli and Mohammad Shami, which makes this tour look like an uphill climb for the Indians at all times. That being said, with talking points aplenty after the first test, which feels like ages ago already, I will start with a mini review of what happened at Headingley to give you a bit of an insight into the eventful start of the series before I discuss what we can expect to happen in Birmingham over the course of the next 5 days. So, firstly, Ben Stokes made an interesting decision at the toss, which looked to be a Nasser Hussain moment from the Gabba in Brisbane, Australia in November 2002. However, Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes made their decision purely based on statistics from the previous 6 matches played in Leeds, which showed that all 6 of the previous tests at Headingley were won by the team batting second or fielding first, depending on which way around you want to say it. Therefore, the England skipper miraculously ignored the overhead conditions and stuck India into bat, and after England were a bit loose in the first half an hour, it looked as though England would be in for a tough day as India began to cruise it at the crease. Opening day centuries from Yashasvi Jaiswal and Shubman Gill ensured India were in a commanding position at 359 for 3 at stumps at the end of the first day's play. On a glorious day for batting, India began this series by playing very eloquently with the bat and with the captain leading by example as he reached the close on 127 not out. However, the forecast was set to change on day 2 as the clouds were expected to roll in, which is why I wrote a piece saying that England's only chance to come back into the game was to be more disciplined with their lines and lengths and somehow snare India's last 7 wickets for 91 runs to restrict the tourists to 450, 475 at a push. In an unexpected way, that did actually happen, but here's how. So then, with India on 430 for 3 and with Rishabh Pant having smashed a century in double quick time, that mission seemed impossible. Nevertheless, Shubman Gill, the India captain, played a rash shot to Shoaib Bashir when on 147, and at that time nobody thought anything of it as it was still 430 for 4 and India still had 6 wickets in hand. However, that sparked a collapse of 7 runs for 41 wickets. Remove the 2 big hundreds scored by Pant and Gill as well as Jaiswal's opening day 101 and India would have been blown away. Their last 5 plays scored nothing. I say 5 because Gill and Pant were 2 of the 7 wickets to fall after making big hundreds. In fact, take off their 3 individual scores of 100 or more, and had they made single figures, they would have been bowled out for anything between 89 and 116. That being said, 471 was a good first innings score, but they really should have been ruthless and posted in excess of 600 to ensure batting once would be enough to win the game. Then came England's innings, and the hosts were in a bit of a tricky situation just before the close of play on day 2, despite Ollie Pope's magnificent 100. On the stroke of stumps then, Harry Brook should have been out for a duck. However, and this was a big moment in the game, Jasprit Bumrah bowled a no ball, which enabled Brook to go on and make 99 the following day, meaning that England were able to reply with 465 runs, trailing by just 6. Once again, take off Harry Brook's 99 and India would have had an 105 run first innings lead, and it should have been much, much more than that, especially considering what I said about their miraculous collapse with the bat. The same thing happened to India in the second innings. The top order got runs thanks to centuries from the opener KL Rahul and Rishabh Pant. In fact, the latter became only the second wicketkeeper ever to score twin centuries in a test, and batting at number 5 in England, that is no mean feat. So, with 5 centuries in the test match, India should have been in total control, but once again, their last 6 batsmen were castled by Josh Tongue for just 31 runs. That really was pathetic. Twice, India should have batted England out the game, but somehow England managed to keep themselves in the contest and found themselves chasing less than they required against the same opposition at Edgbaston in June 2022. England's record 4th innings chase to date against India was 378 for 3, and so this chase was just 7 runs less than that. That being said, it was to be England's record 4th innings chase at Headingley after their miraculous 362 for 9 scored against Australia in the Ashes in 2019, very much thanks to Ben Duckett's 149. His only fault in the test was not posting 150. That was it. Sky gave him a 10 out of 10 for his performance, but for the fault I just mentioned, for me, it should have been a 9.5. Zach Crawley and Ollie Pope were the 2 big talking points before this series began, and both have secured their places for the full 5 tests, in my opinion. Crawley could do nothing with that corker of a delivery from Bumrah in his first spell in the first innings, at a time when 3 or 4 England wickets could very easily have fallen. Ollie Pope had the nous to get through that tricky period and score a brilliant century as he overcame his difficulty with managing his first 3 overs. It was a shame that he added only 6 to his overnight score on the Sunday morning, but the Surrey man will be looking to be consistent across the remainder of the series. The same can be said for Zach Crawley. In the second innings, he played a brilliant hand and he complemented Ben Duckett's charge really well. He scored only 65 in inverted commas, but he played the game situation well and made sure to see off Bumrah's opening 2 spells to help England put on 188 for the first wicket, which ultimately sent England on their way. Someone in the media described it as Bazball with brains, which was refreshing to hear because sometimes these players have been known to just throw their wicket away at any cost because it's just been the way that we play, to quote what has been said before now. Thereafter, the rest just had to finish the job, and despite a few shaky moments, Root and Smith completed the job with great aplomb. England then looked settled until the news that Jofra Archer was announced as part of the squad for the second test after playing just 1 county game for Sussex simultaneously to the first test. There was a lot of excitement around his addition to the squad. However, he is coming back into a test match environment having not played for 4 years, and despite England's difficulties bowling against India's top order, if the seamers click in the first few overs at Edgbaston and Jaiswal, for example, is caught early, it will be a completely different game. And that seems to be the option McCullum and Stokes have gone for, because on Tuesday, the leadership team selected an unchanged 11, which makes a lot of sense in terms of consistency and giving this group of players another opportunity to shine in the limelight. At the end of the day, based upon the first test, unless India's top 4 or 5 score runs, they will be nowhere to be seen, not only at Edgbaston, but for the rest of the series. So, with an Ashes series coming up down under over the winter, surely Archer can be saved for the 4th and 5th test. In my opinion, England do not need to push him and rush him back into action, but Archer and Wood playing alongside each other at the Oval in the final test seems to be highly likely at the moment. Not unleashing a player as keen as Archer, and Wood for that matter, into action is much easier said than done, because the player is always going to want to play and take part in a test match if they feel they can. However, having said that, I think the current squad would have massively benefited from extra time together with a big gap between the first and second test. But I am not Rob Key or Brendan McCullum. That being said then, what do England need to change to improve ahead of the second Rothesay test of the Anderson Tendulkar Trophy? Well, if Zak Crawley could play another innings akin to his magnificent 189 at Old Trafford 2 years ago, that would be a confidence booster for both himself and the management. Crawley's place is secured for the summer after he played smartly in the second innings, as aforementioned, and even though we are sometimes critical of these batsmen, you do occasionally have to take your hat off to a snorter of a delivery when opening the batting, as Sir Alistair Cook, I think, would tell you. If Crawley and Duckett can continue to play baseball with brains, as it has now been called, and India do not field Jasprit Bumrah, the series risks being more or less wrapped up before we even get to Lord's. At 2-0 down, India will not be able to make up the ground, and that is why it was crucial for them to not let slip one of their 2 excellent positions with the bat, especially in that first innings. Shubman Gill's India are the first team ever in the history of Test cricket to post 5 centuries and then go on to lose the match. Bumrah also recorded a first innings fifer, and whilst I am not a statistician, surely that is also the first time a team has scored 5 centuries and a bowler within the same 11 has taken 5 wickets in an innings, and then the team has lost the match. India's individual performances were incredible, and the Test match scorecard is very skewed in that sense. However, when it mattered most, England were better as a team, especially when it came to catching in the field, but also with an all-round contribution with the bat. India need to improve their fielding and make sure that they keep their front foot heel behind the popping crease when delivering the ball. Otherwise, this could turn into a summer to forget very quickly for India, especially as Ben Duckett already has 211 runs in the series to his name in an exemplary player of the match performance at Headingley. Right then, whilst I cannot give you a live pitch report from the middle at Edgbaston, it seems as though there might be a bit of weather around as the test goes on, especially on Saturday and Sunday, so days 4 and 5. However, I don't think that would stop Ben Stokes putting India in again if he were to win the toss, and I feel as though Shubman Gill would be wise to bat first to give his batting order a chance to rectify some of their poor game management after their Leeds debrief in the camp. Runs on the board used to faze England, now it does not, and after chasing nearly 380 in Warwickshire the last time these sides met here at Edgbaston, it is more or less a given that the Three Lions would fancy another 4th innings chase, especially as they have been successful when needing 250 or more runs to win, 6 times out of 12 attempts since June 2022, according to an Instagram post published on the official ESPN Cricinfo page. As for India, it will be interesting to see if they decide to make any changes. It seems certain that Bumrah will play 3 of 5 tests. For me, as I alluded to a moment ago, their strike bowler has to play this test match due to the state of the series. Granted, he probably would want to play at Lord's, but surely it is too much of a risk to keep him on the sidelines because a few of the other bowlers looked poor, especially Shardul Thakur. Other than Ravindra Jadeja, he took the least number of wickets in the test, and with the exception of that one over in which he dismissed both Duckett and Pope with 2 wickets in 2 balls in the 4th innings, he was nowhere to be seen, and he cost India 89 runs across both innings. Having said that, it seems as though Nitish Kumar Reddy could be on hand to take Shardul Thakur's place, or Lord Thakur as he was referred to across the test match, as Reddy could be more accurate according to the Cricketer magazine. Disciplined and tight bowling is likely to lure Duckett and Crawley into drives that they do not necessarily want to be playing early on in their innings, especially as the former despises having to leave the ball outside his off stump. If Reddy can prise open the door early on in England's innings and he continues to bowl accurately whilst Bumrah simultaneously keeps up his first innings form from Headingley and India work as a team with both the bat and in the field, this test has the potential to go India's way. On the contrary, India's record at Edgbaston is poor, very poor in fact. According to ESPN Cricinfo, they have played 8 tests in Birmingham, having lost 7 and drawn 1. After the one-off 5th test in 2022 as the series decider after the 2021 drawn 4-test series, India will need to be immaculate to pull off a victory, but it will be interesting to see how they play this time because they will have been scratching their heads as to how they did not win in Leeds. I am certainly still scratching mine. In cricket, they say that catches win matches, and so, that being said, dropping catches loses matches, and that's what happened. Even Ben Duckett was dropped on 97 when chasing down the runs, and he added another 52 runs thereafter. If the little opener had got out then, it could have been a completely different game, the tension would have mounted, and who knows what would have happened thereafter, especially as we see time and time again how the match situation can change in an instant, especially in test matches, which is why it is the best form of the game. So, that being said, here is my India 11 for the second Rothesay test at Edgbaston. As in, here's the players I think should play. KL Rahul, Yashasvi Jaiswal, Sai Sudhasan, Shubman Gill, Rishabh Pant, Karan Nair, Nitish Kumar Reddy, Mohammad Siraj, Jasprit Bumrah and Prasidh Krishna. And for England, the 11 selected is as follows: Zach Crawley, Ben Duckett, Ollie Pope, Joe Root, Harry Brook, Ben Stokes, Jamie Smith, Chris Wokes, Bryden Cars, Josh Tongue and Shoaib Bashir. Right then, how will the game go? Well, regardless of whether India or England win the toss, I think India will probably be batting first today once either of the captains have made their choice at 10:30 a.m. Thereafter, I can envisage a situation where Wokes on his home ground, accompanied by Tongue, hit their lines and lengths immediately, and both Rahul and Jaiswal, first test centurions, are back in the hutch for single-figure scores within the first 40 minutes or so. Sai Sudhasan will also be castled cheaply, and, reeling at 30-odd for 3, India will require a rescue job from Shubman Gill and Rishabh Pant. An 80-odd for Gill and a third consecutive century for Pant will get India back into the test match, but when they both fall in quick succession, the wheels will come off once again thanks to Josh Tongue's skills when hoovering up the tail, meaning that India will be bowled out for 270 runs, leaving England in the box seat. For England, there will be no repeat of Duckett's faultless performance in Leeds, and Reddy will bowl him out for 8, but Crawley and Pope will guide England to the close with 50s, as England will finish the opening day on 120 for 1, cruising the test match. On day 2, Ollie Pope will be dismissed for a well-played 85, but Crawley will go on and score 134, and a magnificent 37th test century from Joe Root will put England into a dominant position. England then will declare on 475 for 7 with a 205 run first innings lead and have 30 to 40 minutes before the close to bowl at India's top order. However, India will block out the day before producing a fight back thanks to a second Yashasvi Jaiswal century. Rahul will fail for the second time in the match as he will be dismissed cheaply on the third morning, but Sudhasan will post his first half century of the tour, supported by Pant, who will also score another half century to make it 4 consecutive scores of 50 or more in this series for the wicketkeeper batsman. However, with both batsmen dismissed in the 60s, India will fall away and be bowled out for 319, leaving England 115 runs to win the Test match, which Zach Crawley and Ben Duckett will do at a canter on the fourth morning amidst the drizzle to leave England 2-0 up in the series, thus leaving India with everything to do before Lords and a headache surrounding their comments to the media around Jasprit Bumrah playing only 3 of the 5 tests this summer. As aforementioned, the series will then move on to Lords for the third Rothesay Test, where England could, rather surprisingly, clinch the series and leave Old Trafford and the Oval as dead rubbers, much to the disappointment of cricket fans, although points in the ICC Test Championship will still be up for grabs. Therefore, it is essential that England are ruthless, but they will also need to ensure that they make an effort to bowl all 90 overs scheduled in a day when out in the field so that they do not face the same punishment in the current 2025 to 2027 ICC Test Championship cycle. Right then, thank you very much for listening to me, Gregory Richardson, once again here on Puritans Radio. I look forward to taking you through the next 5 weeks or so of a compelling test series between England and India, which hopefully features many more thrills and spills for me to tell you about as the weeks go by. For now though, enjoy the second test and see you next Wednesday for more Edged and Gone, and don't forget that this week's 4 1/4 Sports will be aired once again on Friday afternoon during Ian Fleming's 007 magazine show live. Right then, just quickly, on Friday I'll be attending day 3 live at Edgbaston, so my 4 1/4 Sports episode next week will be a special insight into my day out at Edgbaston. For now though, take care and bye bye, and enjoy the rest of today's 80s show.